now I think we need to start thinking about, we have a way to access this from anywhere. That's cool. What does it actually need to be able to do? And the first thing I want to think about is the easy one that we kind of already touched on with this canvas group thing, and that is just the ability to sort of turn the menu on and off. So here's my game window so we can preview what this looks like. Menu on and off. Okay, so I need to basically, my intent, I mean, we can review our design document just to make sure we're doing it by the book here. But it doesn't really say this. But the idea here is that there's going to be a button that the player will press, like a key on the keyboard or a button on the gamepad, and that will bring up the inventory menu. And then, you can either click this button or press the hardware button again to dismiss the menu. So basically we need a button that does that, toggles that thing between 0 and 1, and we should also make sure we toggle this interactable along with it, because it needs to be interactable or you can't click any of the stuff. Okay, so let's just remember, in order to do that, we need access to this canvas group, which is a component on the same game object that our inventory menu is on. So that means in this inventory menu script, I can make a private canvas group, and I'll just name it canvas group with a lowercase c, and then I want to go ahead and initialize that in awake, but I'm going to do it after all the singleton stuff here, because if there's a problem with this, I don't need to do any of this other stuff. So let's just, do it after we check to make sure everything's okay, or there's no point in really going this far. So if everything's okay, we will say that canvas group equals get component canvas group. And we can get away with this because the canvas group component is on the very same game object that our inventory menu script is on. And get component just searches that game object for the very first instance of that type of a thing and will store it inside this variable we made. So now that we have a reference to this canvas group, I'm going to make a pair of new methods. Private void, I'm going to make a show menu. And I'm going to also, while I'm at it, go ahead and make a private void hide menu. Now, there's different ways you could do this. You could make one menu or one method here and have it take a parameter like something like that, where you could show or hide it by passing this a parameter, and then that would save you having two methods. But I kind of like having two methods just because I just find that it reads better. Like somewhere down the road where I have to type inventory menu instance dot show menu, I like that better than inventory instance dot show menu false. And same thing, I like hide menu better than show menu false. I don't know, it's more verbose, I guess, but either way it works. So how I'm going to do this, when we show the menu, we need to set the alpha of the canvas group to 1, and we need to set the canvas group dot interactable to true, right? This is the things that need to happen to make our menu visible. It's easy to remember those because I can just test them out in the editor, right? So that's how I know what these things are called and what they do. Next, I'm going to do the opposite over here in hide menu. So I can just kind of copy this, go down here, And instead of setting the alpha to 1, we will do 0. Instead of setting the interactable to true, we'll set it to false. And in case you didn't know, if you hold control, you can kind of like go word by word. So control arrow keys will go word by word here instead of character by character. So it's kind of faster, but the nifty thing is if I want to select this whole true, I can hold control and shift and then press the right arrow and then it's selected and I can start typing false and then I can hit tab and then that does that very quickly. Anyway, I'm going to save. Now, right when our game starts, I don't want to start the game with this inventory menu visible. So down here in Awake, once we've initialized our canvas group, I'm going to go ahead and hide the menu. This should definitely happen after we initialize the canvas group. If we were to try it like this, this would give us a null reference exception because the canvas group has not been initialized yet, so it would be null. So we have to make sure we initialize the canvas group before we call hide menu because the hide menu method actually uses that canvas group. So as long as you have it set up in the correct sequence here, let's go ahead and go into our game. I'm going to leave the menu all visible, but when I run it, it will hide. Cool. So now we need to detect when the player presses some button and then show the menu. And so what I will do for detecting input, we typically want to do that inside of update. Not fixed update because we want the input detection to feel very responsive. So we'll just get our update back. And in here, we're going to say something like if input dot get button down, and then remember, get button is if they're holding it. Get button down is if they've pressed pressed the button just once. Anyway, the question is what button? And so remember, when you use the get button suite of methods, you need to set those up in the Unity input manager. So you go to project settings, so edit project settings, and something like this should pop up. Let's go ahead and add an axis. So I'm going to increase that number by 1. What it did was duplicate our last one, which happened to be interact. We made this one. I'm going to make this new bottom one, I'm going to call it inventory menu or something like that. I could call it show inventory. Shows the inventory menu. All right. This is, you would use these descriptive names and stuff if you ever wanted to implement a control bindings screen like you might have in several PC games where you can customize the controls. That's where these are useful. Like this kind of stuff can be useful there. But anyway, the positive button for this. So I want to figure out what button brings up the inventory menu. And my personal design thoughts on this are that if I am right-handed, I'm holding the mouse with my right hand. Our game uses the mouse and keyboard in tandem for me to move around and look. So I want to pick a button for bringing up this menu that does not cause me to take my right hand off the mouse. So basically it needs to be on the left hand side of the keyboard so I can still quickly basically hit this button while my hands are in the WASD with my left hand here. And so if that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and choose maybe tab, I think makes sense. So where it says positive button here, I'm going to type tab. And I'm just kind of guessing what the name of that is, but if I guessed wrong, it wouldn't actually let me type it in. So like if I test, like maybe I thought it was capitalized. See how it just went away? That's how I know that it's not capitalized. And then, so it's kind of, that's their sort of crappy but better than nothing way of letting you know that you typed it in wrong. Anyway, the alternative positive button, this one I'm going to use for people who may be left-handed. They're holding the mouse in their left hand, maybe using the arrow keys with their right hand to move, or maybe I don't know. I don't know what left-handed people do, but I'm going to go ahead and just pick a key that's just on the right-hand side of the keyboard for left-handed folks, and that way they don't have to try and press it with their left hand. That should be on the mouse. And I'm going to choose I, which I like because it's like I for inventory. Maybe that's not the most ergonomic choice if you're using the arrow keys, but I would argue that somebody out there might just hit I for inventory, even if they are right-handed, because it, the letter I stands for inventory. So that's my logic there. I guess, feel free to pick whatever buttons you want. Just make sure you have a solid argument about why you've chosen those buttons. Okay, so show inventory menu is the name of this new input I created. I'm going to just copy it here because it's totally case sensitive. And if I were to have a typo when I go back and paste it in here, my game wouldn't work right. So anyway, if the player presses this button, what do I want to do? Well, basically, if the menu is already visible, I want to hide the menu. If the menu is not visible, I want to show the menu. So I need a quick way to figure out if the menu is visible or not. And I'm going to make something you don't see all that often, but is useful on occasion, and that's going to be a private property. So I'm going to make a private property called is visible. So even though this is private, actually I don't need to do the longhand version of a property here because this is going to be real easy, read-only one. Anyway, it's private, but we're still going to name it with a capital I because it's a property. And this is going to be a bool. I forgot to call it a bool. So private bool is visible, and it is going to just be a read-only property that directly points back at the value of, let's see. So what of these would tell me if my menu is visible? I guess it's going to show me if my canvas group is greater than 0, then is visible should be true. So we'll say canvas group. Oh, look, this isn't working because I screwed up naming my canvas group variable. So I'm going to go fix that real quick. So up here on line 8, I need to change the name of that. And so in Visual Studio, if you change a name and you think about it before you do anything else, while this is still sort of has this dashed outline, if you hit Control period, you can go choose the quick fix, rename Canva group to canvas group. And if I do that, it'll rename it everywhere I've used it already. So you want to make sure you do that. It makes it way easier to rename stuff so you don't have to go in and do a find and replace or manually fix all of them. Anyway, back in my property I was making, is visible is just going to return canvas group dot alpha is greater than 0. Now, yeah, I could just use this anywhere I want to check this, but this, again, I just think it reads more simply and clearly. So that's why I made this property that doesn't really do anything. It's just pointing to the value of that. So if the canvas group alpha is greater than 0, it's visible. If this is not true, then this will return false. All right, anyway, back in my update function here, I'm going to go ahead and actually, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to select everything I've got so far. I'm going to hit Control period. Well, hold on, let me finish this statement first, I guess. I need to make this actually a complete line of code. And then I can do what I was going to do, which is just refactor this out into its own function. So anyway, if you press the button, what do I want to do? I'm going to check if the menu is visible. And if it's visible, I'm going to hide the menu. And otherwise, I'm going to show the menu. So if the menu is visible and you press this button, that needs to be hidden. We want to toggle it essentially. So if it's already visible and you press the button, hide it. If it's not visible and you press the button, then show it. Anyway, now that I have all of this typed out, I'm going to hit Control period to sort of extract this into its own method. That's what this extract method is going to do. And then I need to type in the name, and I'm just going to call it handle input, and then I'm going to hit enter. So that way, and rather than just putting all this inside of update, I've essentially just given it a name. It helps clarify to other people the intent of what all this code is doing. So that's what it's doing. It's handling when the player presses the show inventory button. I think this should work, so let's save it and let's try it out here. So I'm going to run my game. It should automatically hide because I put that in awake. And if I hit tab, the menu shows up. If I press tab again, the menu hides. So that's cool. We've a few problems. One is I don't want the player to be able to look around and move around while this menu is open. I want the screen to lock, and you should get this cursor that I got by hitting escape. That functionality is just built into the FPS controller script. Also, I can see my I forget what we called this, like the display text, the interactive object display text. It says locked. That should not draw on top of my menu. So that's another issue. So we need to fix those couple of things. Let's fix the text drawing on top first. That should be real easy. I believe what you do is you're going to want to find, so we have two canvases. We have this HUD canvas and we have the inventory menu canvas. The HUD canvas has the looked at interactive display text and the targeting reticle. So we need to make sure that this inventory menu canvas draws on top of this one so that when this one is visible, we cannot see this one. Well, we could add code in to like hide this or something, but that's kind of overkill. We just want it to always be beneath the inventory. And I think we can do that with this sorting layer that's on the canvas. So if we go to the inventory menu canvas, basically I believe the way this works is the higher the number here, the later that it draws. So if you think about it like that, if I change this to 1, you can see that worked. And the reason it worked is because like the computer is going to draw everything on sort order 0 first, which would be this one, right? Sort order 0, so it would draw my text and my reticle. And then after that, it'll draw the stuff on sort order 1, which would be my menu. So it's drawing over the top of the other thing, which effectively makes it so I can't see the other thing. So that text is all still there, you just will never see it, and that's good enough. So there it says locked. I hit the menu button, you can't tell it says locked. You can't see the crosshair anymore, so it's working.